Humanianity, a new religious call. Humanianity, religion for us all. Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we can be.
Hi, I'm Bill Van Fleet, and this is Humanianity Conversation number 68, recorded on August 4th, 2020. It is the fourth recorded conversation with Jordan Thompson, who has a strong interest in philosophical issues and has become interested in the Humanianity Project. We continued to discuss the question of the appropriateness of the expression of anger or hostility in the effort to promote change for the better, including the question of the necessity for violence during progress in the improvement of culture. And we also talked about the difference between our naturally occurring methods of working on our ethics, as opposed to doing so in a technical manner with careful definitions of terms, etc. And we talked about possible methods of achieving more accurate beliefs in a culture by the maintenance of an official discussion environment that is transparent to everyone, where all issues would be explored and debated. Okay, so one thing you wanted to discuss about perception and belief, maybe some other things to discuss also. So,
Yeah, I just offered that up as like, something we could delve into. But then if you have any other subject matters or topics you want to add to that, by all means, have at it.
mhm.
But yeah, I just kind of become fascinated with that particular topic and area of study recently, with all the different things going on in the media and politically, and then as well as I know you have touched on those things quite a bit in some of your different writings you've done.
Uh-huh.
Rational, ethical belief management and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, do you have any thoughts about it going into it, about the uh, belief management and things of that nature?
Well, I have all sorts of ideas, but I don't know what is going to be most relevant for you. And since this was something that came to your mind, I thought that might help us to become more specific if you, indicate it. In other words, are there some questions that are coming to your mind?
Well, I don't know if you'd say questions, but just, well, thoughts that could become questions, or just ideas that are put out there.
Yeah.
Like I've heard this term thrown around a lot lately, and it's kind of my brain's kind of latched onto it. And you know how sometimes you can have a concept of something but then you can hear it put in a different way with different words or different term, and it'll actually change your concept or perception of something a little bit.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that's done that for me has been this term that's been flying around, false narrative,
Mm-hmm.
and how false narratives are created. And, that would kind of directly relate to people's beliefs and, what people believe things are and aren't. It seems to me like uh, more information than not is, to one degree or another, a false narrative. Just looking at things critically and objectively, that's what I see.
Next to the last sentence, I didn't follow about false narrative. Um, I might guess at what you meant, but it wasn't clear.
Oh, well, looking at things from a critical thinking standpoint and an objective perspective. It seems to me that most information I hear via various media sources, different political groups, religious groups, what have you, seems to be to one degree or another a false narrative most of the time, in what I've observed.
Uh, one of the one of the linguistic problems that we are right away faced with, I think, is the meaning of the word narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I think my impression is that that kind of came in with postmodernism, and um, the it kind of is a substitute, I think, for um, belief system or subsystem. But so you're looking it up now?
Yeah, just so you know, because I usually when a term is uh, put out there, I just go off of what those words are supposed to mean or supposed to mean in the context in which they're being used.
Right, right. But that's what is often unclear. Narrative, I think, is closely related to story. And
What is being said? Yeah.
uh-huh. Um, okay, so what is being said um, would be what is being said about such and such. And that um, immediately rules out that it cannot refer necessarily to that which is actually accurate. In other words, uh, there can be any number of narratives, some true and some false, and so forth. But it is not the nature of narrative itself to be something that is true. It's storytelling. It
Yeah.
is,
Hence the term false narrative.
yes. Uh-huh.
So it's like, yeah, the words that were being spoken are not true
Mm-hmm.
or not entirely accurate. And that's why I said to things are to one degree or another a false narrative. A narrative could maybe have some truth
Mm-hmm.
interjected in it, while other parts of it are false or inaccurate. So you'd have to examine each narrative for what it is. But like I said, that's where looking at things, uh, looking at things critically and objectively come into play. Is for me as far as determining whether the quality of a narrative or the quality of the statement or idea.
Right. Well, see, when you talk about looking at things critically, um, uh, what does that mean
Like
other
from,
than, other than other than the way I look at things as compared to the faulty way that others look at things? Uh,
no, no, it wouldn't mean that at all.
oh, okay.
No, because if I say I'm looking at it, then that gets away from the whole critical thinking methodology. I think it's got nothing to do with me. It's got everything to do with logic and facts. You
Right,
know,
right. But then the problem is uh, that logic can be faulty, of course. But even more than that, the question is, what would lead you to classify something as a fact? Um, and beyond your own feeling of certainty that that was an accurate statement.
Yeah, those would be two very distinguishable different things. So yeah, a fact would be something where you have a conclusive, or at least extensive, very strong evidence for that idea or that statement. Uh,
Right. But we know that people with opposing viewpoints can say, I have great evidence that my position is the correct one.
so now you're getting into the other component you mentioned, like the where so if I just say it's a fact to me because of the way I feel or the way it makes me feel, then that doesn't really make it a fact. No more than it makes me feel a certain way. That may be a fact. Me believing a certain thing releases dopamine into my brain. That's probably a fact. But beyond that, there might not be any more factual information to it.
Mhm. So it gets back down to what the word fact means. And what we're dealing with, I think, is two things. We have associated with any belief a certain degree of confidence in that belief. At one extreme would be the feeling of certainty, um, or a little bit back from that would be feeling fairly certain about such and such. And then continuing in that direction along the continuum, having significant doubt would be toward the other end of the continuum.
Mm-hmm.
Or of course, you could use a different continuum that had to do with feeling a very strong certainty to a feeling of great certainty that it was not so.
Yeah.
That would be a different continuum. But if we're talking about a belief that one has, one can feel very confident in that belief and would be inclined to say, oh, I'm certain about such and such. But now what we also know is that that feeling of certainty is not good evidence that whatever one feels certain about is actually so, especially in the circumstance where someone else says, well, I don't agree. And but when you observe conversations, you will see somebody say, and that's a fact, meaning, of course, that that person has great feeling of great certainty about it, but also implying that the other person should have a feeling of great certainty, if for no other reason than that you have that. Like, for instance, well, you know a lot about such and such, and so you are certain about such and such, so the other person then would be able to say, well, because you believe it, I believe it too, because I have.
That'd be a misuse of the word or the term fact then, if it's
Well,
not truly indeed a fact.
well, see, the problem there is that I guess you or someone can pose present the hypothesis that there is such a thing as a fact, um, that that does not just represent the opinion of somebody. And
Yeah, that's two different things. But then the opinion is only, the quality of the opinion is only as good as the facts it correlates with.
Yeah, but then facts, you see, a person stating that something is a fact does not mean that it is so.
Yeah, well, of course, but if they can provide very strong evidence, or even better, conclusive evidence that it is indeed a fact, then that would define it as a fact.
Well, except that a person could do that and convince the other person and still be wrong.
Oh, well, yeah, and that goes back to the false narrative thing, because it's like I said, you're looking at, there's false narratives in every direction. And I'm sure whoever belongs to those groups doesn't want to hear that. But if you look at things, like I said, you look at things objectively, then you'll see almost, like I said, a majority of things contains to some degree a false narrative.
Okay, so
by definition of the words. You know, so that what people are saying doesn't correlate with the evidence. You see what I'm saying?
but it doesn't correlate with the evidence in the opinion, like in your opinion or in the opinion of whoever is speaking.
I mean, unless I'm hallucinating or, extremely delusional or something, which I'd like to think I'm not, at least. Or maybe I'll come lay on your couch or something. You can give me some treatment.
But see, what I'm talking about is that we humans can feel quite certain about something and regard something as a fact, and be very closed to evaluating it and questioning whether indeed the belief in question is accurate. And I think it's a little bit clearer ultimately to refer to accuracy of belief rather than using the term fact. Using the word fact makes kind of introduces the idea that this is something not to be questioned. And whereas belief can always be questioned. Now, we have great difficulty questioning our own beliefs about things.
You mean we generally as humans?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't at all.
Well, I know that that's what you believe.
That's
yourself.
Pretty good.
But see, the thing is, that which we can feel very certain about ourselves can turn out not to be so. Now, maybe what you're saying is accurate, but that would have to be determined. But the person himself can easily say, oh, well, I'm objective, and if I believe something, I know it's true because I am a critical thinker, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And yet other people can be in disagreement and indeed have good evidence for what they are saying.
Okay, but let me ask you, are they in disagreement because of they are looking at things in the most rational way they possibly can, the most objective and rational way possible they can look at it? Or are they in disagreement because of what you're saying is making them feel uncomfortable about what they believe, maybe because there's a confliction in their brain or their mind that, deep down within, okay, something's not quite right about what I think or what I believe, but because of the way it makes me feel, and because I'm accepted by the group and revered by the group, I'm very strongly rooted in that. I'm very strongly mentally and psychologically attached to that. even to the degree that I've been reading and studying about it some lately, about how your brain actually rewires itself based upon your beliefs to such a degree, you know, like your neuroplasticity, your brain killing off old connection and forming new connections within itself. It will rewire itself to the degree that it will believe something irrational over something rational. It's something irrational will overpower something that's rational in your mind. That's crazy.
Yeah, and indeed, that's what we're talking about, that there are multiple determinants of one's belief. And of course, there are different kinds of belief. Well, not divisible into specific groups, such that it either fits in one group or another, but there are a number of different things indeed that foster that promote a particular belief, and you're describing the like, for instance, the reward that one feels inside when one is going along with one's group and says, yes, we have the right answer, and so forth. Or the opposite side of that, the bad feeling that comes about by virtue of disapproval by the group because of one's deviation from what that group is supposed to believe, has the ethical belief that one should believe it, and that is an act of loyalty to the group. It's part of our tribalistic tendency, that we tend to divide ourselves up into us and them, and those who are different, we have reduced empathy for to some extent, and even can involve, even can go to the extreme of killing them.
Oh yeah. If you look back at, you know, around the 900s and the 1000s, the year 900s and 1000s, when they had the Crusades, you know, and they would the different religious groups over in the Middle East would, you know, slaughter one another in great numbers over different mythological beliefs, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, that still is true. Like,
Well, yeah. I mean,
if
they're still doing it over there. They're still,
if you believe the wrong thing in some cultures, you can be beheaded.
yeah. So then, you know, you got to ask yourself how many people truly believe it, and then how many people are just going along, because how many people are doing it out of faith? How many people are doing it out of fear? You got to ask, you know?
Well, whatever we do, there are 20 plus or minus some reasons for doing it. We don't generally do a particular thing just for one identifiable reason.
Yeah.
And some of those reasons may be what we would call good, and some may be called bad. Some may be called conscious reasons, and others unconscious reasons.
Yeah.
And so forth. But the feeling of confidence, well, I am a critical thinker, and so I don't have to worry about inaccurate beliefs. I just, because of the person I am, I think critically, and therefore, if I believe something, it is very likely to be true. Although, yes,
Yeah.
I will listen to somebody who disagrees with me and so forth. But to a greater or lesser extent, we tend to have that feeling. Well, there is myself, I, the critical thinker, and then there are these other people who are led by their emotions, but not me.
Well,
And it,
I think it would be if I mean, like I don't think about it exactly like that. I think maybe I don't know, you know, like you're saying it like from a person who's like putting themselves on some type of uh, you know, psychological or belief pedestal or something, like they're putting themselves like above everybody, like some type of perspective of grandeur or something. I don't know, but no, but there are a lot of people who do choose to look at things more objectively and critically versus uh, going off their mental or psychological or emotional need to belong to the group or to feel a certain way by believing a certain thing. So it's not just I'm sure there's many millions of people that think very similar to that. It's not just me that's way. I think there's a lot more people than even statistics will tell you that look at things that way to a greater degree.
okay, well, I think where I would have a slightly different perspective, although this may just be a misunderstanding linguistically, um, is the idea that there are two groups of people in the world. There's group A and there's group B. Group A thinks critically, and group B is carried away by with regard to their beliefs, by their emotions. And
Yeah, that's
what,
probably an oversimplification of that
what I'm
concept.
saying is that any of us, myself included, um, is going to have some tendency to say, well, I have a better understanding than other people, so I can kind of look down upon other people. Um, that's kind of built into us. It's a part of our dominance hierarchy nature as a species that we are very, very sensitive to whether we uh, are looked up to or looked down upon, and whether we can look down upon people or uh, look up to somebody. And uh, in looking up to somebody, especially if one feels that one is accepted by that superior uh, entity, person, whatever. Um,
Maybe we're initially built that way, just like a computer or a machine would be built to be a certain way or perform a certain thing. But I don't feel that way at all. As far as being above or below anyone, I don't actually to think like that would not be I would not get a good feeling from that. So I'd say I'm almost the opposite from that. But and that's the thing too. We can be born with a certain brain that's genetically predispositioned to be a certain way, but then by what you're exposed to, what your environment is, and the different choices you make and things, your brain can change greatly over years, over months, and especially years and decades to look at things differently and even react to things differently. So maybe
Absolutely, and uh, that's what I believe ethics or morals is about, and the way that one develops that, generally speaking, is by virtue of the cultures that one that are molding one as one um, moves along in life. And in other words, even though I would like to fill in the blank, and in this case it would be look down upon other people, I believe that that's the wrong thing to do. And that would be because one's cultures had somehow uh, left one predominantly with the feeling I should not look down upon other people. But it is a very, very strong tendency. And I know from personal experience that I can go from feeling that I do not do such a thing to discovering, well, that's what is happening within me. And so then I make further modification,
But
perhaps.
you were willing to be honest with yourself about it. You were willing to be honest and fair about that very thing. You just illustrated. Whereas a lot of people won't do that.
Well, there is variability, yes.
But yet you still shouldn't look down on them.
Well, I could imagine that a person could say, well, maybe I should look down upon such individuals. And it would depend upon what one meant by looking down.
Yeah, that's true. You want to define what that term means.
Yeah. Because recognizing that a person, for instance, if you're a teacher and you recognize that your student has not grasped a particular thing yet, then you recognize that the student is not as far along as you, that you are in a quote, superior position with regard to how much knowledge you have in that particular area. And being aware of that would then enable you to help the student come up to your level, if indeed you're using a continuum that where up is more knowledgeable or skilled or whatever it might be. And by the way, that's one of I think one of the motivations that is strong in becoming a teacher, helping others to become better, is a way of seeing oneself at a superior position in the hierarchy, and therefore being looked up to and so forth, and being admired and being followed and so on. Now that doesn't mean that that's something that should not happen.
Yeah.
All I'm referring to is the basic motivational states that we humans tend to have as a part of our basic hominid nature. Other species can probably do that only by, primarily by demonstration of physical prowess, beating the chest, and and threatening and stuff like that. So we're all dealing with these things inside of us.
Our hominid nature.
Yeah. We all have these built into us, just like chimpanzees do, and bonobos, and so on.
But then can that be overcome or superseded by environmental conditions, training, our own choices that we make over time, our own brain training that we can do, with ourselves? Can those hominid nature and urges actually be overtaken by a more intelligent and benevolent and enlightened way of thinking and viewing things and behaving? I think it can.
Well, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I would refer to as ethics. What one should do, even though one feels like or wants to do some particular thing, other thing. I really want to do such and such, but I believe that I should not, and therefore I don't want to do it. So I want to do it because it will gratify such and such in me. I don't want to do it because um, uh, of my the ethical sense associated with my ethical belief. I should not do it. And
Isn't that like the little angel and the little devil on the
yeah,
shoulders? You ever seen that illustration?
yes,
Yeah, it's kind of going in that direction.
yeah. The angel would be one's uh, basic ethical philosophy, and the devil would be those impulses that were basically there because they were built in. And that could be an oversimplification. That
Well,
sounds
yeah, it is. But then also you got to look at it like this: how much better things go for a person when they listen to that angel. You know, how look at how much better a person's life ends up being most of the time, a good majority of the time when they listen to that angel.
yes, I agree with you. That's not always true.
Yeah,
Some
oh, yeah, like I said, a majority of the time, not always. Yeah,
and
unfortunately.
and one's ethical beliefs can be quite different from others within one's own culture.
Oh,
Uh,
sure, yeah.
so a person could believe that what the right thing to do is to stand up against one's culture and say this is not right. And
That's hard for most people, I think.
well, we're talking about quality of life, and
Yeah.
indeed that can lead to things that's the Christ myth, if it's a myth, as
Hmm.
to whether he actually existed on Earth. Uh,
Right.
that's the odds are 2/3 that he did not, or something like that, according
Oh,
to.
really? Is that what they? I've heard of this idea. I've read some about it and watched some programs about it, and so I know of the idea of what you're speaking. But so that's kind of the statistic they're applying. They're saying like 66% chance he probably didn't,
Not anywhere near that degree of precision, 66.
but
And
two-thirds, give or take a little.
that was just something I read. Uh,
Okay.
I don't, um, uh, that the person who wrote that knows far more about that sort of thing.
Well, there's no physical evidence, I don't think, to my
Right.
knowledge.
Well, there are all sorts of issues there,
Yeah.
but anyway, we're going back though to what I was talking about, the Christ myth, or if it actually happened. Uh, here, what he was doing, according to the narrative, was taking a stand against his culture, and
Right.
that's what happens to some people when they take a stand against their culture.
Mm.
And honor killing would be an example currently, one of the best, easiest examples to point to. But there's also the what's being talked about a lot currently, and that is the danger of expressing the wrong viewpoint. And it's one of the dangers is what is being referred to as cancel culture.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
say something slightly wrong, then the mob will come for you, and they will
Hmm.
destroy your business or your life or whatever.
Hmm.
And so um, so that's uh, getting us back to where we were earlier in the conversation, that indeed um, uh, our beliefs are determined not just by what the facts would seem to be, in quotes, and it's probably unwise to use the word fact there, but
Well, no, if you're using it by its definition in dictionary, I understand what you're saying.
yeah, I know.
I'm going by the context of
Yes.
the use and the definition of the word.
But at any rate, so we are all subject to that.
Kind of, you know, you and me, not nearly as widespread and probably severe as like a public figure or a celebrity. They're the ones that really have to skate on thin ice, walk on eggs,
Yes.
so to speak. Because yeah, man, I mean, it's so severe that maybe just not if even anybody says something that bad, if they just misspeak a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, and what I'm baffled by is that, I know some well-known people want to take a stand against it, but that's the only way it'll stop or get greatly, you know, pushed back, is a larger group of powerful and well-known people will have to come out against it. Celebrities and public figures and such, because yeah, right now that's the kind of, I guess, the benefit of not being famous or well known, is that if you do say something that's politically incorrect or you know what the cancel culture doesn't care for, they're not really going to pay that much attention to you, because probably what you're saying is not really having that much of an effect, you know. But
yes.
yeah, so we you know, it's a good thing that you're maybe not like a famous you know, like one of these doctors on TV that, you know, goes on there every day and talks about stuff, because maybe something you would say that even if it is fact based or evidence based, or there's a lot of good information in it, if, like you said, if they didn't like it, you could find yourself in big trouble. That's unfortunate, because they're going against, you know, the very thing, you know, I mean, that's basically slaughtering the First Amendment, you know, because now it's like, do we really have freedom of speech now? Do we, you know, if you're in fear of your livelihood, is, you know, because you might misspeak or you might have a different opinion, is that freedom of speech exist anymore? You know?
Yeah, and you know, that is an interesting concept, the concept of freedom of speech. We take
or freedom of expression, yeah.
we take for granted that, of course, that is a good thing, freedom of speech. But if we take a closer look at it, we can do things with speech that are that cause tremendous tragedy.
Absolutely.
And you know, that whole issue is being played out now, like tweets being removed because they have wrong information in them and so on. So there is a question as to whether freedom of speech is really should apply only in a particular area. And of course, like for instance, to threaten a person's life would be a speech item. And that we pretty much agree should not be done. So a person should not feel free to threaten another person's life.
Right.
That would just be one example. Then there's also the question of there is a related and somewhat competing ethical principle that one should tell the truth. One should always tell the truth. And well, suppose one wants to lie for some reason, that would be speech. They would be saying something that they did not believe to be true.
Then
And
you might have to back up a little bit and specify that truth would be what they believe to be true.
yes, there's that issue also. So a person thoroughly convinced of some conspiracy theory could indeed say things that were significantly harmful to some other innocent people. So,
And you could have them, a person that's delusional or maybe demented, this hallucinating or has a hardcore delusion about something. You could put them on a polygraph machine and they would actually pass.
yes,
They truly believe that. So to
yeah,
them, it is true. But according to evidence, or, we said we didn't want to say facts, but according to evidence, it's, likely not true, but to them, in their mind, it would be true.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm trying to think what else you were saying after that, because I just wanted to clear up the thing about, the term truth.
Yeah, well, the term truth is very problematic, and has people have been working on that concept for thousands of years. So, there was this uh, question as to whether um, uh, truth was something that, whether there was an objective truth that could be discovered, um, absolute truth.
Well, wouldn't just like our compilation of evidence over time be the closest thing to that?
Closest to, but the question was whether there was such a thing as absolute truth. And
Yeah, I
um,
don't know if that's an answerable question.
right, that's what I'm saying. It was it finally kind of collapsed. The
Yeah.
logical positivists um, worked hard at it, as I recall, um, and finally kind of had to give up.
Mm.
Um, but and that's when pragmatism evolved. Like, well, if it works, then that's good enough, and then that degenerated further into postmodernism. Yeah, well, what works for me may not work for you, so we
And
further.
then maybe that's not so bad as long as people aren't causing harm. As long as because people, everybody is built and wired a little differently through their genetic predisposition and through their the environment they've grown up in and what they've been mentally conditioned for. But as long as what you do, your behavior doesn't cause harm, then maybe to some degree that's okay. I think our biggest issue with humanity is the behavior that causes harm. I think that's the biggest issue we have. The behavior and maybe the beliefs, the narratives that are harmful. And it's, I mean, you can dig deep, but you don't have to dig real deep to see what causes harm and what doesn't.
Well, there's a problem with that, though. I agree with you essentially, but you can take a different worldview. which happens to be my worldview,
All right.
and that is that our species goes back, however far it may go back, hundreds of thousands of years, a million years, whatever.
Well, I think us in particular go back about 200 to Central Africa there.
Yeah, but okay. But at any rate, what I'm saying is that um, we have become an unusual species because of our language capabilities, and then because of our development of the rules of logic and rules of evidence.
Mhm.
And so, what that means is that we humans can work on ourselves and change ourselves in very significant ways, such that what we have always been doing, we can start understanding and modifying and changing. Now, if we say that, well, we humans, we do everything pretty much okay, everything's fine, then
Well, that would not be true. I mean, we know
okay,
that.
then there's the question, see, as to whether it is sufficient to do no harm, or whether it is very important to work on making the world a better place, to promote this change in our species, where currently we are just a toddler and we have much growing up to do, and we can only vaguely imagine what that would be. But it essentially what we're talking about is we cause ourselves tremendous pain, suffering, disability, and early death by what we decide to do, we humans.
No doubt.
Okay, so stopping doing that would be important,
Mm-hmm.
and that would mean working on understanding and working on promoting this change to a better way of life that we so far only have a little glimpse of. And so that's doing more than just refraining from doing any harm. That's actually doing one's part to promote that change. And see, as you know, my big thing along those lines is what I refer to as humanianity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to promote that, and it's not been very successful, of course.
Well, why not? Why has it not been? Why do you consider it not successful?
Okay. Uh, I do have some theories about that, and they are on the challenge page of the home section of the website, humanianity.com.
How many people have you
But, but
have you reached with it?
but what I'm going to say is, what would be the reason that you are not advocating for it? So you're asking about them as if you're not a part of that.
Oh,
But
advocating for humanity itself,
yeah, why are you not
actual
doing more?
brand or belief system, like the actual website and the whole thing. Like, well, I don't. I mean, it's not. It's not. It's kind of like asking me to advocate for any religion. Where
Uh-huh.
I didn't come up with it. It's not. It's not my. I don't see it really maybe as my place. I've read some of the books and over the website a good bit, and a lot of it is sensible. And I think a lot of people uh, would would agree with a good bit of it, or read a good bit of that and say, yeah, that sounds pretty good, or that makes pretty good sense. But I don't, I'm not really the kind of person to, hey man, you need to go. I mean, it's your body of work, it's your teachings. That would be on you. Just like if I say I wrote a book or uh, or came up with a illustration of my ideas, writings of my ideas, I would promote it myself. I don't think I would ask anybody else to, because like I say, when I've done different kinds of business, like a good enough product sells itself. All you got to do is just make people aware of it. A good enough product will sell itself, or even something you the reason one of the reasons like religions have been so successful is the power of their psychology that are within those religions, that the way they make people feel.
Okay, so now remember, what you are doing is giving the answer to the question that you asked me. Why is humanity not taking off? And going back a little bit further than that, what we're talking about is this extremely important thing of us trying to stop ourselves from doing all the horrible things that we do and becoming a better species. And so your question was, well, Bill, why is it not taking off? And so I asked.
Actually, I said, why do you think it's not successful? Because that's two very different things, taking off and successful, because the definition of success is almost completely subjective. Because success, the definition of success is nothing more to achieve the objective you set out.
What I meant by successful in taking off. See, in other words, the Humanianity project is the effort to come together to foster this important change, the development of our species into something more mature. And so it is not, it's not like my project. Well, it depends on what we're talking about. This movement.
I know what you're saying.
But see, you were saying, well, why is it not taking off if it is a good thing? And then I asked you, well, why are you not doing it? And
No, I think now you're kind of mincing words. If you go back and watch this, you'll see that I said, why do you consider it unsuccessful? I didn't say, I never at any point said that it wasn't taking off or that it was unsuccessful. If you go back and watch this, you'll see that. I said, why do you consider it unsuccessful? Because, and from my perspective, if you've reached even dozens of people with it, and you've helped them improve their thought process and improve their lives and their behavior, then I would think that was at least somewhat successful.
Okay, yes, I understand. All of us have various ways in which we can make the world a better place, and we try to do that. Most of us do try to do that to some extent. But as far as the idea, the success of the Humanianity project, the success would have to do with it catching on and becoming more and more something that people thought about and worked on together to bring about. And so that's what I meant about it not being successful. So far, I do not have any indication that other people are saying, hey, this is a good idea. We need to move ahead with this. So so that's when you asked me, why do I think it's unsuccessful? I said, well, we can find out. Why are you not doing it? And And then you gave some answers. Well,
I mean, that's not really. And then really, I mean, I have a pretty small social circles. And then, the few people I might recommend it to, I don't foresee them, really uh, delving into that too much. So, I mean, it'd be,
uh-huh.
pulling the T-Rex's teeth, I think, to kind of do that. But, to me, so if I'm trying to promote something, I'm going to look at two major factors. I'm going to look at my marketing strategy, like what am I doing to actually put it out there where people even know it exists to begin with, and then my selling point, like the product itself. Once they look into it, what sets the hook? Like with Christianity, for example, they have a very strong. The psychology is very powerful. The most powerful and most knowledgeable thing in the universe says this. Going in, you got that. Then okay, if you don't want to ever pass away, but you want to live forever, and when your earthly days are finished, you want to go live in paradise for eternity, then believe this and comply with this. Give yourself to this. So whether those things are true or not, is up to, I guess, anyone that wants to examine it and decide for themselves. But the message itself is very emotionally and psychologically powerful. You see what I'm saying? Not saying it's accurate, or and if you look at the evidence, there's probably a lot of goodness in it, and maybe some not goodness in it, and you'd have to examine all that and be objective to figure all that out. But that's what I'm saying. The product itself is a very emotionally and psychologically powerful perspective in the way it makes people feel and the way it affects people's lives and things. So that's what I'm saying. Your stuff would need to kind of have some of that element in it, like to something that's going to get people fired up and interested and inspired. And I think that would go for anything. Like with my fitness training that I do, if people came and got sweated and almost puked and got sore, and then they didn't see their bodies changing after a month or two, they'd say, man, to hell with this, and quit. But then when they see their bodies changing and their body fat going down and their muscle mass going up, and they sleep better at night and they feel better during the day and their clothes fit better, then it's like that has a emotional and a strong emotional and psychological effect on them. Therefore, they're willing to keep going with it. They're willing to keep giving themselves to it.
Yes. So going back
to your stuff,
going back to what is needed, if anything does exist, to make it take off, is an issue of marketing. And what marketing has to do with is understanding what makes people tick and making use of that to
and
trick
you
them,
would be an expert in that area, I would think.
to trick the person.
No, not to trick. I wouldn't think so. That'd be kind of.
Well, what you are doing is something that the other person, the other people do not know that you're doing. You are appealing, you are in your mind knowing that you are appealing to them by virtue of a particular thing. And but you're not telling them, hey, I want to appeal to yours, da 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 da.
And now, to a degree, we've circled back to the false narrative by
Yeah.
what you just said right there. But keep going.
I'm not sure I know what you meant.
But that's like, so people on either side of the political aisle, or people that belong to whatever religion or belief system or whatever, are they're doing exactly basically what you just illustrated. Like that's the whole false narrative concept. Everybody in every group says they're right, they're the good ones, and everybody else is wrong and the bad ones. But then if you examine what they're actually saying critically and objectively, every group is delusional and incorrect. It's just different way in different ways. But I haven't seen any of them that their facts stack up solid, and that's what makes me the way I am.
Okay, so well, I'm not quite sure that I understood what you were, the basic thing you were trying to get across, but I think it is uh, in the same area as what I'm saying, uh, that marketing means um, plotting to have an effect on large numbers of people because you know how their minds work and therefore you do certain things to uh, make the herd move and so forth.
I would say that's more of the manipulative and maybe
Yes.
dark side of marketing. Like I got an expression. I say most things can be done the right or the wrong way. There's a few things that should just never be done, like
Uh,
stealing and killing and harmful things should just not be done. But most things like marketing, so it's like, yeah, it seems like you're putting a negative connotation on it, like whereas like marketing can just be a way of putting what your product is out there. Hey, everybody, check this out. Whatever your product is, it can be anything. It can be a book or a teachings a or it can be a service you offer, or you can be a craftsman. Well, your product is what you produce.
mhm.
That's what I'm saying. You can put it out there in a completely honest and honorable way. You don't have to mislead. That's the thing. If something's positive and good, you don't have to mislead or trick anybody. You can
Okay.
just put it out there honestly and say, "Hey, everybody, I I do this. This is what it is. If you're interested, come check it out." And
Okay, and that's what I am doing. But as
yeah.
you point out, uh, it does not um, produce the motivational effect that I would hope for. So there are two possible answers to that. One is that maybe I have overlooked putting some things out there that are important. And the other is that maybe there are ways in which I can trick people uh, into becoming interested, not with a malicious attempt, but the reason I use trick is that I am doing something that gets another person to do something, but the other person doesn't realize that I knew what I was doing and was doing that in order to have that effect on them. So they are doing something and they have no uh, awareness that somebody had figured out um, that I would be likely to do such and such if they did so and that they did so and so because of that. So it has a little bit to do with the issue of honesty.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, and what's that, like the eighth commandment, I think? Bearing false witness.
mhm,
It's like you knew in your mind you were being manipulative. You would have, not saying you did. I'm saying a person,
mhm.
may know they're being manipulative, and a lot. I mean, probably more people than not at one point or another do have an ulterior motive and or a hidden agenda. And that's part of the human condition, I think. But then you say it comes back to if someone's an honest and honorable person or not. I wouldn't want to do things like you spoke of, I have to manipulate or trick people. I wouldn't sleep good at night if I did that.
Mhm.
I like being able to look myself in the mirror and feel good about what I am.
Mhm.
And that like I guess I wish I could give that to everybody. Like worth a shitism, you know, like it's important for me not to suck, you know.
Mhm.
I'm surely not no great saint, and never, I don't think I ever will be. So I don't see myself as above anybody. But to me, it's important to be able to look myself in the face and lay down at night and feel at peace, knowing that I at least tried to be a good quality human being, be good to my fellow man in my world, have a good effect. I sure as heck don't get it right all the time, but the effort is there. The intention is close to pure, you know. And so I wish I could give that to everybody. I haven't always been like that, and you know, so it took a lot, you know, for me to get to that. But
Mhm.
uh, it goes back to what you said about the marketing. You know, if I were to market something, I wouldn't do it in a way where it would bother my conscience. You
Mhm.
know, so like I said, there's a right way and a wrong way to do most things.
Well, that's what I was saying. So maybe there are things that I have overlooked doing that I could do, and I'm still looking, still evaluating that sort of thing. Um, uh, and but as far as well, to give you an example, um, and I believe well, I've talked about this a lot with many different people because it always tends to come up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, Bill, uh, you've got a wonderful idea here, they say, uh, but you associate it with the word religion,
Mm-hmm.
and that turns people off. So
Uh,
what?
yeah,
So
I
what?
mean, I can see where it could, but go ahead.
So what you should do, Bill, is divorce it from religion and present it as a philosophy or something like that.
I would
Oh,
kind of agree with that.
I know you would. I mean,
No, I would. Okay, go ahead.
but see that would be an example of being dishonest because uh, I believe that the vast majority of people um, make incorrect assumptions about the nature of, quote, religion. And that, especially in our Western culture, there is an anti religion movement.
You think?
Yeah, yeah, it's manifested by people saying, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, or whatever it might be.
Well, heck, that's a step backwards, ain't it? Logically.
Well, see, what happens is people equate the word religion with fundamentalist religion
Yeah.
and with the existential beliefs of fundamental religions. Um, when I think that what our religions always have been and still are our effort to come together as adults to work on how to be good people. And of course, the thing is,
But usually within cultures, though, not globally. If we had one global religion, you know, no matter you know how correct or distorted it was, you wouldn't have all the conflict in between. So yeah, it's
yeah, yeah,
within. That's the case usually within a culture or a group.
yeah, that the problem is that because of our tribalism, we have our specific groups that have their own histories and traditions and so on, and therefore are somewhat different from each other, and then come into conflict with each other because of the possibility of being disloyal to the belief system that a particular religion advocates for. But the function of the religion is to work on how to be good people, how to live one's life, how to treat oneself and each other and the environment. It's a little bit like science is not the belief in black holes. It is the effort to arrive at accurate existential beliefs. Okay, so we're talking about religion being the effort to arrive at optimal ethical beliefs. And because science cannot give you that, science
But
can tell
well,
you.
yeah, that's true. But has religion done that?
See, here you're saying, okay, well, let's take a look at religion and what it's been like. See, the problem here is that you're saying, look at the way things have been. And indeed, our religions have had stuff in them that people subsequently have said, well, that doesn't sound like a good ethical idea, doesn't sound like an accurate existential belief, and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. But we're talking about going back in as far as we can in the past, right on through the present and into the future. And indeed, there is within the religions things having to do with interfaith, cooperation, and so forth. And there's progressive thought where uh, um, the religions say, well, we have to change in certain ways to come into the modern world, and so on. So if we're talking about how we as a species are now just a toddler compared to how we might become in the future. And
Hopefully,
therefore,
hopefully.
therefore our religions are of that nature because we create our religions, and our
Yeah,
religions have good in them and have bad in them, and so on.
there you go. Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's
Okay.
a fact.
Okay. Okay. So, um, so many people say what needs to happen is we need to stamp out religion or let it die out. And the alternative to that is no, that we need to improve our religions.
Well, I would agree. I would very much agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not something that most people would tend to
That's
agree.
like saying we need to get rid of all the food.
It's like also saying that because children have all these behavioral problems, we need to stamp out children or let them die out, as
Exactly.
opposed to we need to help them to grow and mature. The problem is, in this case, what we're talking about is not somebody else that we are doing something with regard to, but ourselves. And so it has to do with our improving ourselves. Um,
But
and
let's look at it from you got to look at it from different perspectives. Okay, say if a person reads the Bible
Mhm.
or they're an objective and critical thinker, then some of that stuff, and they're a moral and ethical person, some of that stuff's not going to sound right, and then there's contradictions in there, quite a bit of contradictions too. But it's like what 66 different authors, I think. So that's probably bound to happen. But so you can read it and be truthful with yourself and read some things and be like, boy, that doesn't sound all that sensible, or man, that don't sound very moral or ethical to me. Then you can read other parts of it and be like, man, that's some pretty good wisdom. That's some pretty good ideas. And that's why I agreed with your statement about it should be enhanced. It should be evolved and enhanced. And I mean, I don't know to what degree, I'm not a religious scholar, but I know from the time the original texts were written to modern day, they have been rewritten and like to fit the more modern way of speaking and like the original writings were what, like in Aramaic and some,
Mm.
I think, Greek and uh in Hebrew and things of that nature. So, and then now at least the Bible we read's in English. And then you got even more modernized version. You got the King James version, I think, that was illustrated in the 1600s, and even like the New Living version and all that. That's pretty modern, I think, from the 1900s. So yeah, but I mean, I think it's generally still saying what it was saying 2,000 years ago, and around that time. But yeah, you but then okay, but in a person whose mind is
Let me introduce something. You were talking about how to look at the Bible. See,
yeah.
and I think the difference has to do with, instead of looking at it as a procedure manual, that it would be looked at as a diary, a part of our species diary. And there's other religious literature also that is our diary. It's what we as a species thought at that particular time. The many different,
What the writers thought, at their thoughts and their feelings and views at that time.
yeah, and they reflected their culture also.
To a good degree, I'm guessing, yeah.
And since we humans find that there are all sorts of um, non-accurate and non-logical kinds of thinking that we engage in, um, that was true back then also,
Mm-hmm.
and we can see some of that in religious literature.
But probably more, it was more prevalent back then because we had no science to go on back then. So that's all people knew.
Yeah, right, of
So
course.
when it thundered, the gods were mad.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't the air being disrupted by the lightning bolts and creating a sound. It was angry gods.
So what I am saying is that one can view religious literature as our diary, which we can read and
Mm-hmm.
think, just like personally, if when we're in elementary school, we started a diary, and then at age 50 or something, we looked back and read and came to understand what we were thinking like back then and
Mm-hmm.
what we're thinking about now, and even giving us an idea of how we might even change further into the future. So that would be a different way. It would be a way we would be valuing our religious literature as a tool for studying ourselves as a species and studying how we thought and how our thinking changes over time and what the principles are involved in that changing of how we view things. Whether we are seeing, for instance, one thing is seeing ourselves more as a global species, uh, a global tribe, I should say, our
Mm-hmm.
species being our tribe rather than our local group or the religion that we are
And
identifying.
it's too bad that we don't see it that way. But then the Bible says that'll be, one of the signs of the end times if things are that way. A world government is a sign of Armageddon to come.
Yeah, so
So then that's I think now you're getting into the troublesome aspects of it.
well,
Or that
so understanding how we've had this concept of Armageddon, um, and understanding how it has come up over and over and over again and is still coming up today.
oh, of course, it's been coming up since it was written, and the
Uh,
writer himself, what was it, John the Divine, I think, wrote it like 80 years AD. Uh, that people would have been talking about it back in his time, and he, just like you said, he would have wrote down all his thoughts and,
mhm.
or I guess visions about it. So, but like I said, when you look at it objectively and rationally, you're like, that's that's probably not correct. just like a lot of things, just like talking snakes and large boats with every animal on the earth in them, and pregnant virgins, and a guy living in a whale's stomach for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Your rationality tells you those things probably are not correct, or not. That's not accurate information. But many millions, and tens, or even actually hundreds of millions of people, maybe even to the billions, will profess that those things are indeed truthful, or accurate information.
Okay.
And
Now, what I'm talking about though is that in um, our religions or our religious activity, we can take such literature and view it as our diary, at that part of our diary at that time, that people wrote down how they thought about things and so forth.
mm-hmm.
And then we can study that and try to understand why did people come to beliefs like that. Um, and for instance, especially beliefs that we no longer have, what was the reason? What was the underlying reason? What was going on at that time
that could be like some psychological homework.
Yeah, but it's the homework is understanding ourselves, because it was we that wrote that stuff, we humans.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be some reason why we chose a particular scenario or metaphor or myth or whatever, as opposed to some other, why it appealed, why it was passed on, and so on. So the whole idea, see, is the Humanianity idea is that we can bring about change in our species that so far has not occurred except to a minor extent, change that will make a dramatic difference in how we live on this planet, that we are able to do that through self-understanding and analysis and so forth, and then working on our ethics to modify, to inhibit and modify in some ways these things that are built into us to get a better result. And now, of course, so that's what I advocate for. And then the question comes up, well, are you successful? And I say, well, not so far, in that I don't see people saying, hey, let's get into this and make use of it. And
But
then
some
say,
people have, right?
Then you say, why? And I ask, well, why have you not done so? Because your answers would be the answers that most people would give. So that would be, and I do try to outline that on the challenge page, the several reasons, several or many reasons why this thing that would should be a good thing is something that is not, quote, taking off, that people do not feel, hey, this is something meaningful that will give my life meaning, and so on. So that is listed on the challenge page.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it is your product, so it kind of be. I participated to the extent that I've read the first book a good while back, and I've read the Mind Body Problem. I did the audio book, and then I've participated in a good few of these your Skype conversations. So that's my contribution or participation to it. But as far as like being a Jehovah Witness and going door to door and handing out Humanianity pamphlets, or being hanging out in different social situations, and instead of talking about cars or football or telling jokes or something, hey man, you need to check out Humanianity. You know, like that's not, you know, that'd be like me promoting any. I don't really promote any. Well, you said I kind of, like you said, it's kind of tough to say it is or it isn't a religion. So, but you know, you call it, you say it's a religion, but then it's not a religion. So there's kind of some ambiguity there. But you know, still, it's not. You know, if I were you, if it were me, say I wrote a book, or I did some kind of talk or whatever, you know, promoting ideas or philosophy or an ideology of some sort, like I would promote it myself. I wouldn't really, and if people want to promote it, by all means, go ahead. But you know, I would take it upon myself. But then I would, like you said, I would definitely be introspective and say, okay, what a, you know, because to me, like I said, the definition of success is, you know, okay, so you never defined what, so you define success of it as it being more widespread, amongst thousands or even tens or hundreds of thousands of people or greater. But like to me, like, you know, it depends. I guess success depends on what the goal was to begin with, and then the goal could change over time. But
Can you tell that you're having a little difficulty at this point in trying to become clear in what you're saying? See, give me a second here. The success would be that indeed I had contributed something which had taken off and had a life of its own that was positive, of course. That's assuming that it's positive. There, I could be mistaken. The humanity thing could be a bad thing, but I don't think so. But at any rate,
I don't think that at all. But then I got to take a page out of your book and say, what define taking off, and define. You have to illustrate specifically kind of what that means.
What I'm saying though is that just me going around and every now and then finding somebody to engage with, to talk a little bit about something, and then they set it aside. That's Bill's thing. That's not success.
Okay.
It's only if my effort at putting things into words, having a name for this process that is occurring, and helping people to see this thing that's happening actually all over the world. It is taking place, but it's just very, very early. But helping them, contributing a way of looking at it to understand it such that people feel more motivated to find even more ways of doing the same thing. That would be success. But so when I ask you, well, why are you not doing it? Because you have some familiarity. You give some lists of things which other people would give also, and I think that those things are listed, as I say, on the challenge page. So it is a project that may actually not be successful. I recognize that.
Well,
And
but
on the other hand, I may be overlooking ways in which I could. I think one of the ways, um, I've already listed one that no, I, the idea of it being associated with religion, I think, is so basic and fundamental. I would not want to take people's advice and obscure that and trick people into understanding it, as opposed to it just being another philosophy or something. Um, but
so because the definition of a religion is a belief system in which people live by. And it
no,
is here.
no, no. Science is not a belief system that people live by. Science is
Yeah, because science is not a looked at as a
science.
religion.
Science is a methodology for achieving accurate beliefs. Accurate
Okay, I
beliefs.
don't. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so it's not belief in black holes or string theory or whatever. Um, uh, and so religion, its function is to work together on how to live as good a life as possible, how to make the world a better place, what one should and should not do. It's to work on one's ethics or ethical beliefs as opposed to existential beliefs.
Well, maybe that'd be like an ideal version, an idealism of what
Religion is.
do you hold on? Is it you need something? Oh, uh,
No, I see.
ideally that's what it would be, but I don't know if you could say that's what it is.
Well, but that's what it is. If you take a look at everything that people point to and call a religion, then that is what it is. It's not a specific belief system or set of belief systems. It is what people are doing, what they're trying to do uh, in working on ethics. Try what people are doing in the way of working together on what should we do, what should we not do, what should we think, what should we feel, whatever we have any control over. And some more academic approaches to religion uh, acknowledge that, I believe, that you would not define religion by one or more of belief sets of existential beliefs that it has, but instead of what its function is. The function of science is to achieve accurate existential beliefs.
Okay.
The function of religion is to achieve optimal ethical beliefs. And but
And wouldn't you say science is maybe doing a lot better job because science is based more on evidence, whereas religion's based a lot more on uh, humans' emotions and psychology. And there's it's always been political, from its time it began till now. It's always been political. People say, the church and the state should stay separate, but they've always been intertwined, interrelated. I don't know why people even think that.
so you're introducing some really complex stuff of importance, but it is see, anything, of course, can become science is politicized. Everything is politicized because we humans politicize stuff. Uh, Politics or becoming political is what we humans do as a part of our tribalism, and also as a part of our um, our effort to arrive at more optimal governmental systems and so
And
on.
think
But
about it like this too. If you say, uh, here's this ancient sacred text written by the most powerful and most knowledgeable entity, and if you abide by it, you shall receive great rewards here and hereafter. And if you go against it, you should be very afraid and very hardcore things are going to happen to you. That's the psychology to that is so powerful on multiple levels. That's why it's permeated society the way it has. That's why the Emperor Constantine chose it in the year 325. He chose Christianity. He changed the official Christianity of the Roman Empire, the official religion of the Roman Empire to Christianity.
Mhm.
Because it was a political move because he saw the power. He saw the power in it, and
and all of that, yes,
uh
I understand all of that, and
okay,
people are kind of aware of that, but that's not what I was actually going to mention something which now has kind of skipped my mind. There were two things that I wanted to say, but before I did that, I wanted to talk about the problem about religion. Uh, oh, um, um, the again, this has to do with the resistance of everyone, you and everyone else, to making this an important part of your life. Um, uh, what the reasons would be. Um, One of the problems in it is talking about how we as a species can become in the far future. Well, that's not relevant to our daily life. And so it needs to be personally meaningful to an individual, like
yeah,
that it will have some immediate uh, benefit. And and there is that in it, but I don't think that it is um, put out there as clearly as it could be. And but it's right out there. It's on the home page, having to do with our sphere of influence, making the world a better place within our
I'm
sphere of
I'm
influence.
very familiar with that concept. Yeah,
And so the belief manual is a place where one can continually work on one's uh, basic ethical philosophy and connect with other people, uh,
yeah.
discuss in the forum um, the the differences and similarities between their basic ethical philosophies, and that's a way in which people can get to know their primary significant other better and actually have an evolving an evolution of that relationship. Um, it is something that can be used by groups, by religions, by it's a way of comparing your way of thinking with somebody on the other side of the planet and so forth. There's uh, a lot of capability there, but it's not being done. Some people have indeed done some of the work of uh, expressing their agreement or disagreement with what has been entered, and even entered their own beliefs to be uh, voted on by other people and so forth, but but hardly at all so far. And
Oh, you mean there's not a whole lot of content on there thus far?
there's over 100 principles,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
over
That's
100 existential and ethical beliefs, and
on
some
the
people,
belief in the belief manual.
yes.
Well, that's a decent amount of participation.
Well, the initial ones obviously were put in there by me, but then they were
Okay.
voted on by a number of other people. And but as far as ongoing participation or new people coming in and using the belief manual, that's not happening so far.
Okay, well, I'll make it a point to go on there and put something on there.
Well, that would be great. And then you could invite me or anybody else there to the forum
Yeah,
and discuss your differences uh, and or similarities in beliefs about things. Uh,
yeah,
there's a lot of potential there that would really be great. I would feel good about that,
yeah. Okay.
obviously. So,
I'll go on there. I'll come up with something. I'll have to. I guess it'll be what's on my mind at the time.
yeah,
Uh, yeah. I think, like I said, you got to look at all the, all the, I guess, religions or philosophical ideologies or major psychosocial movements of the past historically have had a very evoking message, very inspirational or evoking, thought-provoking, inspiring message. And I think that's what you got to tap into. And like you say, you're, I guess, trying to be true to what you're trying to illustrate to the concept, but then at the same point, like something's only going to go as far as people want want to seek it out and use it, and be a part of it. So you'd have to look at the format and the psychology. Like I said, the uh, the different religions, especially within a culture, have a lot of appealing ideas, and, as well as belonging to the group or being a respected member of that sect.
mhm.
And that all comes into play. So uh, those you got a lot of powerful things that play on the human pull on the human psyche and human emotions that get people involved in studying and participating in things like that. So even though you're not going to be saying the same things they're saying, but there may be some similarities in ideas, you would still need to maybe look at that concept, and maybe you try to use some of that for maybe to progress it further or whatever. Like I said, whatever your definition of it being successful is, uh, you might want to just use some of that information to try to help it along.
Yeah. Well, one of the see, we are gradually um, improving in our ability to and our desire to um, share and compare our beliefs with the goal of coming to agreement if those beliefs have anything to do with quality of life, pain, suffering, disability, and or early death, or joy, contentment, appreciation.
Yeah,
So,
but if people, yeah, go ahead. I'll say when you're done. Go ahead.
so uh, the problem is, so we are moving in that direction, but the problem is that our language is so metaphoric, it is really poetic more than technical. And so our words can mean somewhat different things depending upon who is using them or the context in which they're being used. Now, in the belief manual is in the direction of becoming more technical as opposed to poetic. And so, therefore, for instance, you have these uh, existential beliefs and ethical beliefs put in there, ethical principles and rules of conduct and so forth, that people either agree with or disagree with. But you also have the ability to have definitions. And so, for instance, for a particular belief, um, the definition of a particular word is given. And if you are putting in one of your beliefs and you find that one of the words is not defined or is defined but not in the way that you're using it, you can put that word in, you can create a definition for it. And so that's a part of what you can do in the belief manual. So you can
say by so and so, I mean this specifically for the purpose of this statement.
yes,
Yeah.
right. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
But like I said, most of the time, I can usually surmise from the context of the what someone is saying, what they mean by most words. Every once in a while, I can say, "Well, okay, what do you mean by so and so?" But I don't think you could do that. 90 something% of the time, I'm usually clear if someone's speaking properly. That okay.
yeah, but remember that feeling of certainty that you are clear on what they're meaning is something that could be inaccurate.
Well, and I was going to say, if it's an extremely critical matter, then
Uh,
yeah, I may go a step further and say, by so and so, you mean such and such, right? And they'll say, yes, exactly, blah, 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 blah. Then,
yeah.
like you said, the accuracy of understanding will
Mhm.
get better. But two, like when on the website, when you say, we should do as much as we can to promote as much JCA, joy, contentment, and appreciation as possible, and as much as we can to prevent as much pain, suffering, disease, and early death as possible. See, I've read it.
Disability,
So
early death.
yeah.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
uh, people's answers to go about how to achieve those things would be probably very different if you asked enough people.
Well, yes, that's right. So,
And some would be a lot more probably rational, more or less rational than others. So then you got to get down to the mindset of the individual. How important are I guess I could say facts, or how important is evidence to this person? How important is looking at things objectively to this individual, and then
but even more than that, um, is the question of the meaning of those words to the individual. And if you listen to discussions or debates, you can see how words are introduced and just taken for granted, but they can have different kinds of meanings.
yeah,
And so conversations can go on uh, for long periods of time, and there not be real understanding of each other. So what happens if this is primarily in groups of more than just two people? The more people, the more this is true of, is that uh, people will express a particular part of their basic ethical philosophy or something. They'll present something, and then the next person will not be responding exactly to that. They'll take off in a different direction from a word or phrase or concept that that person said, and go in a different direction, and um, and be actually using the words in slightly different ways. And so conversations become very uh, disorganized and very uh, um, fractionated.
yeah.
Uh,
And with debating too, you got another critical factor, whereas and I always try to try to get a pretty good sense of this going in, because if it's the first way, I don't really care to keep going. Is like if people are just trying to prove they're right, and the other one is wrong, not even based upon the evidence they're bringing to the table, but like you said, earlier, I'm right and you're wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong. To me, if it's about that, then the debate's not worth having, because then I don't care about who's right or wrong, because if I say it's if I say it's August 6th and it's 87 degrees outside where I'm at, I'm correct. So, but I'm not correct. Whether I say that or not, that's the fact. So, like, it's not that I'm right or I'm wrong. It's that, what evidence is being brought to the table. So to me, I don't. It's not so much I'm saying I'm right and other people are wrong. I just look at the evidence, or forgive me, the facts. By definition, like if you look it up in the dictionary, I just look at the evidence and the facts at hand. Okay, but if what you're saying sounds good and intelligent, I want to hear it, because over years I have slightly altered and evolved my beliefs based upon receiving some better information at different points. So that's why I'm always willing to listen, as long as what you're saying sounds intelligent and good initially, enough for me to keep listening. If you start saying something that sounds bad or crazy, I'm probably going to bail pretty quickly, as any, most rational people will. But so it's not about I'm right or anybody's right. So when people are trying to prove my belief system is right and yours is wrong, and this bad stuff's going to happen to you because you don't think what I think, or political, same thing with the political and the religious, the different sectors, the psychology is almost identical, and we're the good ones and the smart ones, and we have the answers, and the other ones are the bad ones and the problem, and so and so, and
No, but
so
but
like I said, it's not who's right, it's what's right. It's where the evidence lies. What's
but
best for humanity? What's best for the world?
but see, at one point you were talking about how you would bail when you saw that the person had beliefs that were, in your way of thinking about it, uh, very, very unlikely to be accurate, and so
Yeah.
forth. Now, the question is whether bailing is the best thing to do at that point. And what really needs to happen, I think, is that if difference of opinion is observed, then that's a reason for continuing the discussion and working toward agreement by trying to find out, well, exactly where do we disagree? What is it that where do our beliefs about things diverge?
But
Now,
if all parties aren't willing to be fair and rational, are you going to reach that?
wait, because I think there's a very important
Okay.
part of what I was going to say,
All right.
that let me again state what I was stating and then
Okay.
complete
Go ahead. My bad.
that that if what we're talking about has to do with quality of life, has to do with whether there is pain, suffering, disability, and or early death, et cetera, then difference of opinion ideally should be the cause of continued discussion, however long it takes, in order to come to agreement by finding out where beliefs diverge and why and so forth. However, this was the part to come.
Hmm.
That has to, of course, be within the context of appropriate time management, because we have lots of things to do, and this would only be one of them. And you could spend a lot of time having an appropriate discussion, but at the same time not be doing something that you should be doing, and somebody else die from it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to always decide how we're going to use our time, of which there is not a sufficient amount, I would say. But
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah,
yeah, but I don't
time
have
and energy. Yeah.
I don't have anything to say about how much time there is. So so rather than um, doing what you described, and which is what most people do, namely, when the other person says something that we do not agree with and seems substantially different from what we believe is consistent with the evidence, bailing, rather than doing that, continuing the discussion, but not in non-optimal ways. Well, what is a non-optimal way? Uh, that has to do with one thing in particular, and that is the injection of anger and hostile behavior in
Mm-hmm.
the discussion, and that can be uh, that that can be uh, very overt, or it can be very subtle. For instance, the raising of an eyebrow and smirking and uh, ridiculing and laughing at and so forth. Those are things that are routinely done. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, if you go on social media and you see difference of opinion, you almost always see hostility in it, or efforts to struggle for dominance by these alternative things, name calling, and so on. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and and
let me
that
clear up too, Bob. When I said I bail, I'll slightly alter that, meaning that once something doesn't sound good or intelligent, I'll I'll I won't so much consider it from that point forward. Not saying that I would all at all. I would still maybe let the individual convey whatever information they wanted to have, and I wouldn't be rude or ugly to them. I don't really believe in being that way to anyone.
Mhm.
So all that other stuff is stuff you kind of maybe attached to it, or kind of seen people do or experienced or whatever. But yeah, by bail, I just meant, I guess, like kind of mentally bail. Like, okay, like if you start telling me about something really sounds really intelligent and good, I'm gonna be like, well, man, okay, what are you talking about? Tell me more. I read constantly every day, and every so often I come upon articles, or I've sent you a few of those shows off of YouTube that are
Mhm.
really thought provoking, and packed with some good knowledge. So I read those articles, and I talk to you, and I watch the shows I do, because I think the possibility's pretty decent. I'm going to acquire some new good information or perspective that's going to enhance my way of thinking and living. But yeah, no, even if you started saying some crazy stuff, crazy religious ideas or philosophical ideas, I wouldn't uh, be rude or ugly to you. I mean, sometime when I got a friend I talk to. Sometimes he comes up with some crazy philosophical ideas, but we've been friends practically our whole lives. So he knows I'm not being mean spirited to him, but I'll be like, what? I'll be like, man, I don't know about that, or that sounds a little out there. But he knows I just am saying I don't particularly agree with that or think that's the best idea. But there's no meanness in it, and he can, we can go back and forth, but then when we get off the phone, we'll still be friends the same we were, and we'll be laughing about things. You see what I'm saying? So maybe it's a lot predicated upon the dynamic of the relationship itself as well.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
And that's what, in general, is the postmodern approach. It's a little bit different from what you were saying, but it's in the same direction, and that is, well, you believe one thing, I believe the other. We just have different truths,
Mm-hmm.
and so let's just have a beer. And uh, the and the
And there's probably some usefulness in that.
the statement is, yes, the statement is made, well, further discussion will not be profitable uh, or beneficial. Uh, the usefulness is only to prevent the escalation of anger and hostile behavior and struggling for dominance. It is a way of preventing the struggle for dominance, but it is not a way of going one step further, and that is saying, well, if you and I have a difference of opinion about this, and it has a lot to do with uh, our quality of life and whether people live or die and so forth, then we need to understand why we are disagreeing. This is important. So that step is what is not frequently taken. We are becoming much more tolerant of hearing difference of opinion, but we have not moved strongly in the direction of this effort to try to come to agreement, but always with the understanding that even if we come to agreement, we could still be wrong. And later we might say, well, we need to revise what we have been agreeing to because
which has happened many times in science and elsewhere. Yeah.
Oh yeah, in science, yes, that's happening all the time. And that the the problem is in science, one is working on existential beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
beliefs about what exists and how it works. And there is a criterion for accuracy of beliefs, and that is the ability to predict. So if one takes one's belief or one set of beliefs and is able to make a prediction, and then it turns out that that prediction is not what happens, then there is reason for reevaluating the the beliefs being tested in that way. When we get into the area of ethics, it's more complex because ethics does not have an external criterion that that we can all use to determine, well, which is the better ethical principle, or and so forth.
What about just the effect of the ethical principles, the effect of the ethical principle on humanity and our world?
Well, yes, no, I agree that there is some ability to, and it's a good point. I probably was unclear about something.
And that would be how I view it.
Well, I understand that, but see, it has to do with the ethical principles. Well, it's hard to describe, but in the first place, a particular situation in which one can do A or B uh, could be approached from the standpoint of, well, should I do A or should I do B? And the problem is that there are many situations where that is almost impossible to arrive at a decision about. And
A moral dilemma.
yeah, that's right. That would be, it's often referred to in that way.
Yeah. Life can present those situations and circumstances. I've been in them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so
Um,
you have to go with your gut. You have to
yeah,
go with your spirit.
yeah. Example sometimes given is uh, you are hiding an individual in your house from uh, the Nazis,
Okay.
and they come to the door and say, "Have you seen so and so?" Well, one ethical principle is you should tell the truth. But in such a situation, if you did that, it would lead to the loss of a life.
I'd say there'd be exception clauses with that ethical principle right off the jump.
Well, then that would be, if there would be exception clauses, then that would be the next thing to work on, see? So, and then that gets complex because situations can be so complex that no simple uh, exception clause can be devised that would uh, be applicable in every situation. So that I think the appropriate way to talk about that sort of thing is to say that the ethical rule of conduct is a warning device letting you know that what you are contemplating doing usually or frequently is going to turn out to be a mistake and regretted. However, it is just there, the ethical rule of conduct is there to make you, quote, stop and think about the details of this situation and try to arrive at an ethical conclusion that is optimal for that situation.
I think maybe tell the truth usually in the context that that statement is stated. It means more of like you should be honest about things. You should be forthright about things. Not because, like you said, with the Nazis hiding the person that, or I mean, with the person hiding somebody from the Nazis, obviously you should tell them, oh no, I haven't seen him, and then you should also have a lot of vicious traps in on your property to take the Nazis out, and then also like I'll give you another example. Like years ago, I worked in a gym, and a client of mine, long-term client of mine, that was a lady, came in and there was equipment in the front part of the gym where people come in and warm up before their workout, before their training session. And so the lady had gotten a haircut. She had it longer, like down past her shoulders, and she got it cut up near, partially up her neck, and it was kind of bobbed and curled inward. And I thought, it looked a lot better previously, the way it was, longer and more straight and flowing. But she got it cut. And anyway, I was outside, and I came back in the door, and she was on the treadmill warming up. And she said, hey, hey, do you like my haircut? And I said, oh man, yeah. I said, boy, that looks good. I said, man, when'd you get that done? But I truthfully did not, I truthfully liked it better the way it was before, but I would never dare tell her that,
Yeah.
for obvious reasons. No, nothing good would come from me telling her that. Maybe to a close friend or a family member that you can be brutally honest with, your relationship has that dynamic. You could say, "Oh man, you should have left it the way it was," or something, because
Mhm.
y'all have that understanding. You'll kind of be brutally honest with each other, But
Mhm.
but in this situation, I went upstairs where the manager was, and he said, "Man, he overheard our conversation. He said, "Man, do you really like her haircut like that?" And I told him, I said, "No." But that was a must-lie situation. I said, "There, I didn't. I was, between a rock and a landmine. I said, that's what, like you said, that's a less hardcore scenario of like you hiding somebody from the Nazis. It was a situation where it was better to be dishonest about my personal uh, feelings or perspective about it. But it's still, by being dishonest, I still did probably the more moral or ethical thing.
Yeah, so there would be another ethical principle or rule of conduct, which would be never say anything that would lead a person to feel embarrassed or feel bad about themselves or about how
Feel
they perceive.
insulted, yeah.
Sorry?
I was just going agreeing with what you were saying. I was gonna say feel insulted
Yeah.
or belittled or embarrassed.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, but yeah. So yeah, it's kind of like what it's not so much what do this specifically, do that specifically. It's what's more moral, what's more moral and ethical at this juncture, in this situation.
Mhm.
uh, and you have to, and maybe getting older and being more experienced and more knowledgeable gives you a lot more capability to recognize that and know how to deal with those things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, we have gone 2.5 hours. That's
Yeah.
usually getting close to what's been the maximum.
Yeah,
And
I am getting kind of tired, thirsty, and hungry. So yeah, we can wrap it up here in the next few minutes.
yeah, yeah, well, it sounds good. Well, what you said about doing some stuff in the belief manual, that
Yeah,
that would be fantastic. And
I'll do that either like today or tomorrow, or, no later than over the weekend, just when time permits.
explore, how you can contact another individual. Like you can always do that with me. Like
Okay.
if you are viewing my belief manual, then you'll see the word contact, and then uh, that will click on. If you click on that, then you can send me a message, and the beliefs have different belief numbers, and so you could invite me to the forum to discuss belief number 00295 or something like that, you see. So
Okay.
there's a lot of capability there. You can study, you can search for beliefs that have a particular word in them, like anger,
Mm,
and then compare them, see them all together, and so on. There's
okay.
lots of different things that can be done. So anyway, well, that sounds good. And
Yeah, I'll check that out and try to contribute to that and just look through it and see what
yeah,
all's in there.
that's great. That
Yeah.
sounds great. And uh, also, other people that you might interest in doing the same, perhaps, possibly.
Yeah, if I can think of anyone that I can, because I say that's the thing, I don't do any social media or anything like that. So
I see. Yeah,
my
yeah.
my hands are tied in that regard, just because almost seems to be more bad than good on there. Seems to be. I've even quit watching the news again. I actually noticed it having a bad, negative mental and psychological effect on me when I
That's
was watching it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's interesting. That whole area. Maybe we could have a discussion about that too. 'Cause
yeah, maybe we'll go into that next time.
yeah, sounds good.
Okay, buddy. Well, it's good talking to you. Are you doing good? Is everything good?
Uh, Satisfactory. Hope everything is for you.
Oh yeah, I'm plugging along.
Okay.
Okay, my friend. Stay well, and we'll talk to you soon.
Right. Take care. Bye bye.
Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we can